Ciao, ciao. Welcome to Calcio Charcha. Very special guest today as we're going to preview game week 18 in Serie A. Joining me today is Rohit. You know him from Twitter as Carlista, the Milan fan, and of course, he knows all about tactics. Welcome, Rohit. How have you been, man?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you for having me on the show.
Amazing, amazing. Are you looking forward to a great weekend of Calcio because we have three big games and obviously we'll be speaking about them. We have Juventus Fiorentina, which is a rivalry by itself. You have table toppers Atalanta taking on fourth place Lazio, and of course you have Milan, your team Milan, and my team Roma squaring off in a triple header, which would make any Sunday worth waiting for. What are your thoughts going into this weekend, man?
I think last Milan played 9 days back, so it's been a void in my heart without seeing Milan. I know that Milan are having some issues with
Yeah.
their play, but even then, even if Milan are not playing well, I think for hardcore football fans, watching football is our main thing. So it's great to have Milan, and obviously there is a big. I mean, even though it's not a derby, it's a big rivalry between Milan and Roma. So I'm looking forward to
Of course.
watching the Milan Roma game and obviously all the other games as well.
Obviously, so let's get into it directly. We have Serie A football kicking off in a few hours. Actually, let me just bring in the screen. Here we have it. So obviously, we start the weekend with Empoli versus Genoa. You have an Empoli team that on its day really looks good, can really beat anyone, and you have a Genoa team now under Patrick Vieira. What are your thoughts going into the game? And after you finish, with your thoughts, you can give a prediction also for the game.
I think Empoli, until they had all these injuries and suspensions, they were actually a very good team. They actually even drew with Juventus. I think in game week 4 or game week 3. I'm not actually sure. They're actually
Yeah.
a very good team. They've been coached really well. We actually had them. I think 2 3 weeks back, and they played really well against us. But I think the quality of our individuals overpowered their tactical organization. I think Davis Vasquez initially had a bit of a purple patch, but I think now he's again going back to maybe being normal again. Their defense is very strong. Their three at the back is very strong. Matthias Vitti actually was really good against us, and their attack with Pellegrini and two ex Milan and Pellegrini and Lorenzo Colombo in the 3-5-2. They actually
Mm.
have good chemistry in between them. So you cannot.
Fazzini is also damn good, man. Even Fazzini is really impressed in this course. So
Yeah,
Jacopo,
and there is also talk of new players coming in there. So
yeah,
I think it will be really great. I think Empoli can be a good team. And Genoa, I think under us, I think under Patrick Vieira against us, they were a bit too timid. They had good counter pressing. They were actually trying to win the ball back as soon as they lost it high up the pitch. But once we got past their midfield line, they went back to their deep block and they started defending really nicely. They had a bit of luck with them, with Morata missing two chances. But
mm,
I think they are a good side. I think they might need a few additions in January to maybe take them over to like save them from relegation with the kind of form they are having. So I think it will be a close game, very close game.
your predictions, quick predictions on this.
I think it's gonna be a draw, 1-1.
Okay, I'm going for an Empoli win on this. I have bought some Empoli stocks, this season, so hopefully they win. Coming to Parma, Monza, Parma who were beaten by Roma final last weekend. Monza, having parted ways with Alessandro Nesta. How do you think this game is? This is a 6 pointer relegation, 6 pointer. How do you see this game pan out?
Yeah, I think Bocchetti last to last season, I think he had a very good time with Verona before he was sacked. Bocchetti is also a Milan. I mean,
Yep.
as a joke, we say he's also a legend. So
Yeah,
from one Milan legend to another Milan legend, I think he's also a very defensive coach. He's not. He's a typical Italian coach who likes to go man to man. He likes to defend. He wants to keep the. He wants to keep his back line protected. So he. I think they will actually go for a more cautious approach. And this is their first game, so we don't know what can we expect from Monza. I think Parma are a very organized team. They were actually really good against us. Maybe it was maybe we were a bit disorganized because we actually had a new coach and it was our second game of the season under Fonseca. But I felt they were actually very organized. They were switching the ball quite well. They were actually moving fast from defense to attack. And so I think Parma are a very good team. Not very as in very good, but maybe like a mid-table team. I think Parma might win this 2-0.
Fair enough. I'm going for a draw just because of the new manager bounce that Bocchetti will bring to Monza. He will
Yeah,
try
a
to
new
sit back.
manager bounce can be expected, but
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Moving on to the next game, which is obviously the one that you have to look at the top because your rivals, city rivals, Inter travel away to Sardinia to face Cagliari, who are also in a relegation battle. How do you see this game panning out for Simone Inzaghi's men?
I think Inter are too strong for Cagliari. I mean, this is
Yeah,
a Serie A, but we cannot. I mean, this is a very extraordinary season given the amount of uh, games are that are happening, and you can see even Manchester City are struggling. This season
yeah.
has been quite extraordinary in that sense. But if you are asking me, I think this should be a routine win for Inter Milan. They're very organized. They haven't changed up anything compared to what Milan or Juventus have done in the summer. So for me, they have to have a routine when they have a lot of individuals in form, even though Lautaro has been very off form this season. But with Thuram in form, with Barella I mean, an evergreen player. I think it should be a routine when maybe a 2-1. Cagliari can surprise Inter maybe, but I'm not expecting it. Inter always are good against all these relegation teams.
Yeah, yeah, I echo your sentiment. Even I'm going for a routine intervene over Cagliari. Coming to the first big game of the weekend, where we see table toppers Atalanta travel away to Rome to face a very impressive Lazio team who are also in fourth place. How do you see this panning out? Can Atalanta finally, can Lazio actually halt Atalanta's run, which has seen them, what, 11, 12 games, on the trot? How do you see this game panning out?
So I was actually looking at the stats with regarding to corners because I think over the last few years, I think slowly people are actually picking up on the importance of set pieces, that is corners, free
Mm,
kicks, indirect free kicks, direct free kicks, all these things. Even throw-ins are also having specialists.
yep,
I mean, I was reading about Liverpool having a throw-in specialist.
yep,
Even
yep,
in
going coach.
small teams like Mitchell in Denmark, they're having throw-in specialists.
Yep.
So I was looking at Atalanta's the amount of set pieces they've taken, and they're actually having nearly 8 to 10 goals from set pieces only, and that is
Yep.
a huge number. That is
Yep.
actually on par with Arsenal, who I think suddenly have got mainstream recognition after 2 goals against Manchester United. But if you actually look at the numbers, Arsenal have scored only 7 goals, 7 or 8 before last week. Before the matches yesterday, they scored only 7 goals from an XG of 11. An XG is basically the amount of goals you can score. So from an XG of 11, they have only scored 7, which means they haven't used their set pieces uh, as much as they should have. But Atalanta have actually overperformed their XG, which means that given the difficulty of chances, they have actually finished better. So even if you look
Mm,
at the 2 goals they scored versus Milan, both were from set pieces. They didn't pose a threat as much as from open play. So
yep.
when you're having a team that is in full fledged form, like they have, where you're having that threat of scoring from open play and from set pieces. And I think this is the year that Gasparini finally has the chance to win a Scudetto because all of
Mm,
his players are in form after he has taken over Atlanta for almost 8 years. I think Atalanta are a really good side. They have been playing the same system, the same type of play almost for entire Gasparini's career. So I think that's why Atlanta have been doing really well. They have a set system. They recruit the right players. Finally, their players are in form as well.
Your predictions for this, man. Because Lazio themselves are just a few recent results aside, they've also been in good form, and especially in Europe, they've been flying high in Europe as well. So Lazio at home are always a tricky opponent for any away team. So where do you see this game panning out, and what's your prediction for this?
I think Lazio are actually a very underrated side compared to like I didn't expect them to do this well when we first started the season because
Yeah,
obviously their goal scorer Ciro Immobile left when they were going through a transition. I think Luis Alberto also left. So
Luis Albert also left. Yeah,
Luis Alberto also left. So it was kind of like a cycle was getting over and a new cycle is coming in. But their signings have been spot on. Nuno Tavares, Tijani Noslin. They have signed some really good players. And I think last year's signings are also coming into effect with Gustavo
yeah,
Isaacson. So they're kind of very underrated. I think their set pieces are also really good. I think they've scored nearly 5 goals from corners this year, so they are actually also having somewhat similar curve to Atlanta when it comes to set pieces. So they are also post. I think even against Milan when they were 1-0 down, they didn't give up. They actually came back from 2-1, and then it was Leao who made it 2-2. I think Lazio and Atalanta are having Lazio are also a very good team. And I'm expecting this to go into Atlanta's favor 2-1, but I'm not expecting it to be a very easy game for Atlanta.
fair. I'm going to go for a draw on this one, just because I feel that maybe with the break and with Lazio also recovering some players, I just feel that they just may stop Atlanta for a point, but not all 3 points. So I'm going to sit on the fence here and go for a maybe a 1-all draw on this one. The next game is Udinese versus Torino. Of course, you saw Udinese. You saw Florent Thauvin is enjoying a purple patch as well. Late renaissance in his career, and Torino, who have been battered with injuries, should have been higher in terms of the personnel that they had, but obviously the injuries have really hit them hard. How do you see this game panning out?
So Torino's coach was actually Conte's assistant long back.
Yeah,
So
Vanoli.
I yeah, so I was actually very interested to see him, and Torino was our first match when we opened this season, and they actually played really well against us when they were not having any injuries at that point of time, and they were actually they were quite similar to what Conte's Inter was doing when he was in Inter. So they were playing really well. And I was also interested in looking at Udinese's numbers, where they were actually scoring a lot of headers. A lot of their goals are headers, and a lot of some of their goals even came from throw-ins, like set pieces, like throw-ins. So they are actually even I think there was a case study done on them very recently on the amount of headed goals they were scoring. And I think not just Thauvin, I think I'm also quite interested in Lorenzo Luca,
Lorenzo Luca.
who is yeah, I think he's a bit underrated. He can improve his game. He has that ability where he can actually hold the ball up. He can actually score. He has that physicality, but I think his ball playing is a bit lacking. But we know that Italian strikers tend to have a kind of late growth in their life. We saw it with
Yeah,
Luca Toni. We saw it with Pirlo. Actually, was a great player, but I think at Juventus he grew an extra gear. So
yeah,
the Italian players tend to peak a little later. So
yeah,
I'm expecting Luca to maybe who knows to have a Di Natale kind of thing where he peaks a little bit more later. So I think he is also very important, and I'm also kind of like very interested in in their defense. They also have one very huge guy in Isaac Torre, who is nearly 2 meters tall, which is like 6 feet, what 6 feet 7, 6 feet 8. So
hmm.
It's been that thing. I think Udinese are kind of a is a very underrated setup. I mean, they have been we always say about Atalanta, how Atalanta has been
Yeah.
scouting for the last 8 years, and they've been going at it. I think Udinese actually is also doing the same thing, but not as much as success. Where they're
Mhm.
having a set formation, they're playing the 3-5-2. They're playing with all these players who are physically great, not tech, maybe, and with one player who's technically great, like Gerard Delafeu. And that's been their thing. That's been their motto. They have actually kept at it, and they've been keeping themselves in Serie A for a long time now. So I think Udinese are actually a great team, and Torino. I mean, with a president like Urbano Cairo, who is half crazy, you actually you cannot expect. You don't know what to expect from them. One season they are in the relegation zone, and then next season they are what sixth or seventh. They are actually fighting for a European spot
Yeah.
in Conference League or in Europa League. So they this is a very unpredictable thing. Both teams are physically very great. I'm expecting it to be a draw.
Fair, fair. I would just maybe go for a Udinese win on this one, but for the Romanisa that is in me, I want a Torino win because Udinese are 4 points ahead of us right now. But I'm going to go for a home win on this one. Napoli versus Venezia again. This is Antonio Conte who is chasing Scudetto with Napoli up against Eusebio Di Francesco's Venezia, who's kind of blow hot and cold, more cold than hot, but it's an away trip for them. And Napoli are surely favorites going into this game. Rohit, what do you think?
I think this hot and cold is mainly because of Eusebio's idealistic approach. I think he's not. I mean, I think as a Roma fan, maybe you can actually kind of understand. He has a set way of playing, and I think
Yeah,
the difference between him and a Conte or even Simone Inzaghi is that Inzaghi and Conte play to win. They will change up
yeah,
their tactics. They change it. They're not afraid to park the bus or maybe play a more defensive setup once they are 1-0 up. But Di Francesco is like, even if you are 2-0 down, he still wants to attack. So when you're playing that sort of a formation, your results. I think last year with Frosinone, we saw it. They were actually playing really well. They were. I think Matthias Sule was getting a lot of praise.
yeah,
Yeah. I think one more of their strikers. I think Caio Jorge, the
yeah,
Juventus striker. He was also getting some praise, not entirely, but they were getting a lot. I think Bastiani also was their star player last year. So with
yeah, yeah.
Frosinone,
Special
I
India.
could see that even when they were 2-1 up against us, and if it was some other coach, if it was some other coach, he would have actually tried to park the bus against us because Milan has some issues against teams that park the bus last year, but they played a high line against us. We scored back, and then it became we won the match 3-2. So that's what the problem with the Francisco team is, and this is the exact kind of manager that a team like Antonio Conte relishes. Because
Yeah,
if by chance Napoli get the lead, you can expect him to play a more defensive mid block or a low block, and then
yeah,
you have a guy like Romelu Lukaku who has the pace and who has a physicality to just burst down the center of the pitch and just score in a counter attack. So that's exactly the type of thing that Conte wants. He wants teams to attack him. He baits you into pressing them, and then he switches into counters. So I think this will be an easy win for Napoli, 3-0, something like that.
yeah, yeah. I tend to agree with you on this as well. Uh, another big game and a very very intense, bitter rivalry, which probably a lot of our subscribers aren't aware of. UA and Fiorentina, both sets of fans do not like each other, and obviously they've had a lot of history in the 80s with a few games. When Fiorentina were challenging for the Scudetto, but we'll obviously get into that in a separate video. But the current Fiorentina are playing exciting football. Raffaele Palladino has come and changed the mood in La Viola. Obviously, the only the incident with Bowe was the only black mark in the season. Otherwise, they have been flying. And you have Moise Keane, who's on fire, and he's facing his old club away in Turin. And Juve, with their own problems, with injuries and drawing a lot of games, unable to get out of second gear. And obviously, on the internet, you had a lot of comparisons with Max Allegri's time at Juve and Thiago Motta's time with them. How do you see this game panning out?
I think the rivalry's peak point was when Juventus snatched Baggio from Fiorentina. I think that's
Of
where
course, yes.
the I think that's where the bitterness started. Not bitterness started, the peak
Even
of the
if you
bitterness. And
remember Rohit in the 80s also, I'm thinking this is when Platini was there. So 81, 82, there was a game where Fiorentina were favorites to win the Scudetto, but a few decisions did not go their way, and Juve won the Scudetto in the end. So there was that from then, and then I think the Baggio thing just took it to a different level only, if I'm not
took
mistaken.
it to a different level, and Vlahovic has maintained it. So
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
that's kind of the thing, that rivalry is there. I think Serie A has not done a great job at marketing this. I think
yeah,
even fans here are aware, in India, are aware of a Sunderland versus Newcastle rivalry, but they are not aware of a Fiorentina versus Juventus rivalry, purely because of horrible marketing from Serie A. I think
yeah,
getting into the game, I expected Juventus actually to struggle a lot, because the ethos of that club has always been that has always been an Allegri style of play. They like to play the more defensive style of play. I think their uh, their pride has been to provide so many defenders. If you're looking at Gaetano Scirea, Giorgio Chiellini, Bonucci, even Dino Zoff, and so many other coaches. Sorry, not coaches. So many other defensive players have been actually Zambrotta as well. So I think they have provided so many defenders to the national team. I think their style of play, their ethos has always been to play a more defensive style and then counter attack. Marcelo Lippi has always been the emphasis of it. So going from that to what Thiago Motta's very uh, very bold style of play, where he speaks about 272 and stuff like that. I think I was expecting a down part of it, and it has come out that way. They gave him some good players, Nico Gonzalez and Douglas Luiz and Kefren Turan, and I think the injuries have done a bit of disservice to him. So for me, Juventus are struggling, but I think they will pick up somewhat, because it is very difficult to go from a particular style of play which you have been playing for 3 years to a completely different. You're basically going from North Pole to South Pole in terms of
yeah,
football here. So it will take time. It will take some time, and I think Vlahovic still hasn't been consistent enough ever since that one good season he had with Fiorentina under Italiano. So I think the most important part is that they actually make that shift from that defense to from that style of Allegri to that style of Motta. But I think those injuries haven't helped them enough to for that transition to happen. So that's why I think Mota, who's a bit more pragmatic, has decided to prioritize results rather than making that transition now. So that's why I think these kind of results are happening. Fiorentina, on the other side, I think their sporting management has to be credited. 2 years conference finals. Italiano was a 4-3-3 coach. He went to Bologna, and they actually replaced him quite well with Palladino, who is more of a three at the back coach.
yeah,
In terms of, I think in terms of off the ball, they're actually very similar in terms of using man markings thing. They're actually not giving you too much space between the lines. But the most important thing is that Keane is converting all the chances. Keane and Goodmanson is actually converting all the chances, which is the most important thing when you are actually playing a mid block, or in football. If you see any great team, every great team has had a good defender and a good striker. If you are looking at
yeah,
1982's Italian World Cup, Paolo Rossi was there. If you're looking at 94 Italian World Cup, you had Baggio and Baresi. Or if you're looking at AC Milan's great team, you had Baresi, Maldini, and Van Basten. So any great team needs to have good defenders, and you need to have a good striker to finish your chances. So I think Keane is very undervalued at Juventus. I think he had it in him. We saw it in PSG. We saw it in his initial run in Juventus. But I don't think any coach had the. I mean, there is always a kind of accusation towards Italian coaches that they're not very keen to help players grow, and maybe the new generation of coaches with Palladino, Italiano, and Motta are actually against. I mean, are now using those principles of actually helping players to grow. So I think that way Keane is actually growing, and he's able to actually realize that potential that everybody, actually saw it in him. So that way, I think, and I think I have to also say, Yasin Adli has been a very
Yeah,
big catalyst in their change. I think AC Milan made a big mistake in letting him go. He's
yeah,
actually been that person who is actually connecting that defense to attack, and all those that turnovers and all those the kind of possession play that uh, this Palladino wanted to play. So I think these players, Amir Richardson also has been quite good. So these things, I think it'll be very, it'll be quite, it'll be a quite difficult game for both teams. I'm expecting a draw to. I don't see a clear winner here.
fair enough. I'm just going for a very narrow UA win just because they're at home and they have that mental edge over Fiorentina as rivals. Barring that just one game, Giuseppe Rossi scored that hat trick. UA have always gotten the better of Fiorentina in recent times. So I'm just going for a very very narrow UA win. I don't know. That's my gut feeling on this, but it's going to be a good fixture to watch definitely. And for neutrals, who haven't watched Serie A, I think both Rohit and I would really recommend to for you guys to tune into UA versus Fiorentina. Very very strong rivalry and a very intense game to watch as always. Before we do Milan Roma, let's wrap up with the other two games, and then we'll close the stream with Milan Roma. So Como versus Lecce. Once again, this is probably a relegation fight at the end. How do you see this game panning out?
Relegation dogfight. Como, I think they spend a good amount of money, but I think they're not having enough players to, you know, that with that edge where they can actually, save themselves for this season. I think they're planning to go down. I'm also hearing that Fabregas is not. Fabregas might get sacked. He's been playing a bit of a pragmatic. He's been playing a bit of a attacking kind of football. They had mixed results. I think they even won a game against Verona where they uh, came back from 2-1 down with Patrick Cutrone actually scoring two goals.
Yeah,
I think Cutrone has been their talisman so far. But I think they're not having enough this season. I'm expecting Lecce to win 2-0.
fair enough. I'm going for a draw on this one. Maybe like a nil-nil draw also for all you know. Bologna versus Hellas Verona. How do you see this game pan out between Italiano, who's now revitalized Bologna and who are now pushing for a European spot, and Hellas Verona, of course, very Jekyll and Hyde team. Uh, how do you see this game panning out?
Yeah, so we played Verona last week. Their main issue has been that they haven't scored a goal in almost 4 weeks now. I think their XG against us was 0.6, and it at max they had two chances, which was bit dangerous. But other than that, they never threatened our team, especially that team where we played with six fullbacks, I think, against them, but they
Yeah,
never seem to threaten us, and they don't have a creator. They don't have any outlets of creativity. They press a lot very high. They have a very good off the ball situation with their coach, but other than that, they look very very off color. I mean, I last 2 years I've actually predicted Verona to go down, but they somehow saved themselves, and They are also on the brink of they're also on the big brink of bankruptcy. They had to sell their players. So I'm not very sure about Verona.
Listen,
I think
Rohit,
Bologna will win this.
you will also be dubbed along with us as a Hellas Verona hater. Everyone over here, all the subscribers, I don't know, have a soft spot towards Hellas because we keep on hating on them. And like we all predicted they're going to go down. They just don't go down for some reason. But
No,
yeah, I mean,
I
sorry,
think I think also there were some racism incidents last week where
yeah.
yeah, Mike was given some racial slurs. So that's why I think most of the fans who are not of Verona or of Italy are not very big fans of them.
Yeah, yeah. Fair enough. So Bologna win on this one.
Bologna win on this one.
Fair. I agree with you as well. So wrapping up this stream is with obviously, Milan, you have a Milanista, you have a Romanista. Big game at the San Siro. Obviously, we'll start with you, Rohit, and let us know what's happening within the Milan camp because you have Paulo Fonseca, whose job is in danger every week, and then there's an issue that he's benching Theo Hernandez. How's the mood in the camp, and how are the boys preparing for this crucial game against Roma?
I think there are two sides of it. I think from a fan perspective, I think things are not. I mean, we are a big club. We expect to win trophies every season, and we want. Theo Hernandez has been the what do you say, the torch bearer of all our expectations. Theo and Leao has been
Yeah,
the torch bearer of all our expectations, and I think when you see a coach who is not Italian as well, I mean, we can see that in terms of in terms of media, Italy is not very kind or very tolerant towards non-Italian coaches. So when you are seeing a coach, especially Fonseca, who is not very recognized, who hasn't won big trophies before, when we see him and come and drop Theo Hernandez, where he feel or as per the rumors that Theo Hernandez does not suit his style of play, I think that is very demoralizing. There are a lot of rumors going on, and the press has been making also the press has been making hay while the sun shines in terms of these rumors that there is a lot of demoralization. Excuse me. I think some players, I can see Rangers and Pulisic saying that Fonseca has actually improved them a lot. But on one side, you are also seeing things like Theo Hernandez. But the main issue for me has been the excuse me. Main issue for me has been that we have too many injuries, and there is no Leao. Pulisic is still not ready. So I think that can be a big issue. On the other side, I think when you're looking, when I'm looking from a little analytic perspective, I think we have actually gone for a sea change. We actually again the North Pole South Pole things. This team is actually very tailored for Pioli's style of play, and he was actually somebody who used man marking. Now we
yeah,
are going into Fonseca style of play where he's using zonal marking. So
yeah.
you are actually going for a huge change where in terms of zonal marking you have to defend a particular zone, and there has to be good coordination between the players. So when especially this year we had players joining late because of the Euros, there was not enough preparation time and players are going through these changes. I think it can be quite confusing, and we even in terms of what we are attempting to play with the ball, there is again huge changes from what we played with Pioli to what we are playing with Fonseca now, and I think it has actually affected us a lot. In the end, I know that results are what matter, but it's a year of transition for us. That's what my understanding is because we are actually trying to change something up. So there are two sides to these things, but in the end, if results are not there, I think Fonseca has to be under fire. I think he also has a little bit of naivety in him where he has not learned to close out games quite like Conte or an Inzaghi. So all around there are mistakes. There are thing or there is room to improve for everybody. So I think that's where we are right now.
Fair, fair. From a Roma perspective, obviously Fonseca is an ex-Roma coach, so I've seen a fair share of Fonseca and his tactics. Like you mentioned, one of the worst nights that Fonseca had was that 6-2 loss at Old Trafford after leading 2-1 at halftime. Where unfortunately there were a few injuries as well that wasn't in Fonseca's hands, but that's a game that Roma should have closed out. To be really fair, um, from a Roma perspective, obviously with Ranieri coming in, the ship has been stabilized. Barring that, defeat against Como, I think the response was there for everyone to see. Final drubbing of Parma. In a game that Roma could have scored, 6 or 7, and you saw a similar show against Braga as well, in the Europa League. So definitely there has been a sense of positivity. But having said that, there are question marks initially on Paulo Dybala's renewal at Roma, but he wants to stay. Lorenzo Pellegrini is in, his place is in doubt. He could be a departure. Brian Cristante, in fact, funnily enough, is linked with a sensational return to Milan. So, but all of that aside, I think at this point of time, Roma really need to salvage whatever is left of the season. We are literally, on game week 18, which is the halfway point of the league. Somehow Roma managed to climb, into 10th place. Hopefully, from here on, there are, only positive steps that's taken. And it's a tough game against Milan, because going away to the San Siro isn't easy. And Milan, do really show up for big games. I mean, I did see the derby win against Inter, and of course that famous win against Real Madrid this season. So I'm expecting it to be a very, very tough clash. Um, Before you give your prediction, at this point of time, even if Roma take a draw, if you give me 1 point right now, I'll be very happy to take it. Away from Milan, take that point and recover for the next game. What are your predictions, Rohit? How do you see this game going?
It's a matter of heart versus the head. I think the head says it's going to be a draw, and the heart says it's going to be a win.
Lovely, lovely. I think that's a good way to finish our game week 18 preview of Serie A. Rohit, to all the subscribers, where can they find you on your social media handles?
Yeah, so I'm most active on Twitter, and on Twitter I go by Carelista. So you can find me there. I'm actually I actually write analysis almost for all clubs, even for ISL. Now I've currently even started writing for ISL as well. So you can find all my analysis there on Twitter.
Lovely, lovely. And for all you guys still watching, on my channel, which is Ajay Menon Sports, Rohit and I will be doing a special video on Francesco Totti and Paolo Maldini. So go over there after this and watch that video as well. And of course, do continue with your love, support, and your comments. Subscribe करना channel को. ये stream जरा English में था. We wanted to keep this conversation going. Unfortunately, this week we couldn't have a live stream, but nevertheless, that gave us an opportunity to speak with Rohit and get him involved as well. He's a very, very active Calcio member, and personally, we've been wanting to do this for a while to get him, get Siddharth, all you Milan fans, and do like a proper, in Hindi we call it Mandali, Milan Mandali, so group of Milan fans together. But glad that you joined us, and of course, enjoy the round of games in Serie A. Keep on watching Italian football. It's free to stream on GXR World. They have a TV app as well as a mobile app for both Android and iOS. This is Ajay Menon. You are on Calcio Charcha. Until next time, from all of us here, it's ciao ciao.
Ciao.